Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
A beautiful day in the neighborhood.
You all good? Hey, thanks for joining us. Jeff and I wanted to, Secretary of Administration and I, wanted to take a minute to just do a little briefing for the meeting that's about to come up on revenues. I'd better take off right after that to an event down in Barrie, which you're all invited to, so I want to have the usual time to answer questions and brief you. So we thought we'd take a minute to brief you pre-meeting to give you all an opportunity to understand the meeting coming up and what it and how we can all help you understand it. As you know, we're coming out of the worst recession in American history, and Vermont has been making steady and very healthy gains over the last several years. We are going to learn during the meeting today that we're going to make a adjustment in the projections for revenue for this year. Instead of the projection of 4.8% that we based our budgeting on, instead it'll be a growth rate of 3%. So obviously that drop in revenue, which works out to roughly $31 million, will need to be adjusted in our 15 budget. It's important to understand the history, recent history. Since the worst recession, we've been climbing back with job growth and obviously therefore a return to better revenues as a state. In fiscal 13, we had the highest revenue growth in the state's history. Remember that we were up $90 million over the prior year. In 14, we again saw revenue growth of 3.1% or $46 million over the prior year. In fiscal 15, we now project that we're going to see growth of 3%, so we'll be up $45 million over the prior year. Obviously, it'll be the biggest revenue year in Vermont's history. However, being up 3%, not 4.8%, that was originally projected, requires us to make an adjustment in this budget that was passed by the legislature of $31 million, or roughly 2%. Yesterday or last night, I met with my cabinet, and I instructed them to get back to us, begin to work, to adjust their budgets and bring us a targeted budget reduction of roughly 4%. I said begin with 4%. Why 4%? We're going to make this small adjustment to our $1.4 billion budget by insisting, and this won't surprise you coming from me, that we not raise broad-based taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, rooms and meals taxes. In other words, we're not going to ask hard-working Vermonters to make this relatively small adjustment by raising revenue. Vermonters' taxes are high enough. Second, I said that we will not shift any of this to hard-working property taxpayers who already find that their property taxes are high enough. So education fund off the table. And third, we will not reduce our obligations to our obligations to retirement or to debt reduction. One reason that we have one of the best bond ratings in the country is because we're prudent, we're fiscally responsible, and we balance budgets the old-fashioned way by making cuts, real cuts. So I've asked them for a 4% target to my secretaries and agencies. This really is no different than when a family thinks they have a raise coming. They get a raise, but the raise is a little smaller than they had projected. The good news, it's July, not January. It gives us almost the entire fiscal year to make this adjustment. We'll be presenting to the Emergency Board a plan in the coming weeks that will fit this 3% growth target instead of a 4.8% growth target. We have to remember as we come out of this recession, and I think this is true nationally, that the growth this year is somewhat slower, although above the prior year, than most economists projected. So in being fiscally responsible, which is my job as governor, balancing budgets, ensuring that we manage taxpayer money wisely, we're going to be presenting to the E-Board the cuts that we think will be necessary to live within the revenues that we will now expect to get this year. So 3%, not 4.8. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but that is what the meat of the meeting will be focused on today.
Was 4.8 the projection in January?
That's
the last,
correct.
E-board
At the last E-board meeting. As you recall, the E-board meeting meets twice a year. These projections are given to us twice a year because we want to be on top of it, and that's exactly what these numbers allow us to do.
Knowing what you know about that.
No, just to jump in a couple
Yeah.
things just to be consistent, so we make sure we get the numbers right. Okay, right here. So, as the governor said, we get a lot of credit for being proactive and acting quickly. It's why we're the only AAA rated state in New England. Many states, when they get confronted with new information, dilly-dally around. We don't. We get right down to it, and we intend to do that. We are required under statute, if there is a revenue downgrade of more than 1%, to submit a rescission plan to the Joint Fiscal Committee. So the emergency board, if the emergency board acts to lower the revenue forecast today, then we will, in short order, submit a formal plan to the Joint Fiscal Committee. In the interim, we are asking our agency secretaries and commissioners to take certain steps, such as an immediate freeze on filling new vacancies without express permission, written authorization by the Secretary of Administration, hold off on management requested reclassification requests, reduce your discretionary spending, things that we can do to slow it down while they are building their plan to meet our target. And then we hope to get those back from our agency departments. So this afternoon, assuming the emergency board were to approve the new projections by the economists, both the legislative and the gubernatorial economists, we will send out a memo immediately, within minutes of the time that's done this afternoon, directing what I just said for agency commissioners and secretaries. They have until a week from tomorrow to submit their plans back to us, and then we're hoping to turn those around as quickly as we can so the Legislative Joint Fiscal Committee can act as quickly as it can. The downgrade in the general fund revenue forecast is $28.8 million, but there are a few other revenue pieces that are ripple through the process that mean that the amount of money that we're going to be looking for is approximately 31 that the governor mentioned. But I just wanted to, so if you see, on the handouts from the economists and the motion for the downgrade in the general fund forecast to be 20.8, but when 28.8, but when you put in things like the little factor from the property transfer tax, and there were some changes that were made in this legislative session, the figure we're looking for is approximately 31 million.
Thank you.
Any thoughts about what the causes of this downgrade are?
Well, the causes are that, when you're sitting there with a recovery like we're looking at, it's very tough to project for economists and for all of us how big that recovery is going to be. And the causes are pretty simple, as the national economists have been saying. We continue to recover, but this has been a slow crawl back from the worst recession in American history, and Vermont's not immune to that. So it's great that we're having 3% revenue growth. We'd rather have 4.8 that was originally projected, but we'll adjust to 3%. We're going to still have the biggest revenue year in Vermont's history.
Which taxes since the January projection are no longer meeting the expectations that they were thought to?
Well, the interesting thing about this particular downgrade is that if you look at the numbers, they're actually downgrading in all areas, some larger than others, but you're seeing reductions in income tax, you're seeing reductions in the education fund projections, you're seeing reductions in transportation. Did I miss any?
No, I think, it was clear back in April that the economists across the country had underestimated the effect of the tax strategy changes that taxpayers employed at the end of calendar year 12 that led to by far and away the largest April revenue collection in 2013 ever, by far and away, much higher than had been anticipated. They knew that would play out as a wild card in 14, It turned out that across the country, economists had underestimated the impact on 14. What the economists are largely saying now is that, look, what we're looking at is a recalibration of what the ongoing take should be from personal income tax, and it's going to continue to grow. For example, withholding taxes, which I look at as being most closely related to wages, are projected to go up 6.5%. That's very healthy. So income tax is going to continue to grow, but that is the component of our overall general fund revenue structure that has caused the predominant reduction of $28.8 million.
Sorry, some of this was clear back in April then. It was just not, the magnitude was not clear at that point?
Way to go, Dave. That's a nice one. Yeah, let's be clear about the word magnitude, because I think we should be careful with it. Let's remember that we have seen growth in revenues, pretty substantial growth, $90 million in 13, and we are seeing growth this year. The difference is between 4.8 and 3%. So this is an adjustment that we feel is really important to stay on top of, so that we're not spending money that we don't have. But this is not a huge adjustment when you look at a $1.4 billion general fund budget. So to answer your question, we rely upon our economists to give us numbers, in a sense, in advance of what's going to happen, so that we don't spend money that we don't have, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
You listed a number of things that are off the table in terms of using to fill the gap. Are risks on the table?
We do not project having to do any layoffs to meet this small adjustment.
Any sense yet of how the reduction in the education fund projections might impact the statewide tax rate, statewide property tax rate?
It won't.
It won't.
They're just small enough that
They're small enough, and what would happen would be it would adjust the level of the education fund reserve. And the statewide property tax rate's already been set for this coming year.
This is the first downgrade in how long?
Well, we had downgrade after downgrade through the Great Recession. Now that let's remember, this is a downgrade of an up year. In other words, we're not taking in less revenue than the year before, which was the challenge in the Great Recession. We're taking slightly less revenue in than we thought we would have. Let's not forget, this will be the biggest revenue year in Vermont history, because we continue to grow jobs and economic opportunity.
And I think just to emphasize what the governor said, and Stuart, what you were saying, in FY 2009, the revenues went down 7.2%. In FY 10, they went down 12%. Now that's difficult.
Yes.
I'm not saying that this is pleasant, but it's revenue growth.
This is a manageable challenge to move from to move to a lower growth rate than we thought we were hitting, but still have growth.
And how much does IBM factor into this?
That'd be a good question for the economists, but my guess is that they will tell you that they have no idea exactly. That one employer probably doesn't impact the overall picture in terms of any decisions that have been made at IBM so far. Whether it sells or not. I doubt you're seeing this in the projections.
And I think if you're listening during their presentations today, I suspect they will say, and they try to get the latest macroeconomic information for the country, and that plays heavily into our forecast. We are not an island. And we're not all that different than the national economy in many ways. And when they sort of saw what was happening around the country, that plays into what they recommend for us going forward. And they make adjustments for our particular situation, because in other ways we are different than the rest of the country. But that's a major factor that was playing into this.
This is part of a national economic trend. We're not immune to it. When you have Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve telling Congress and others a couple of weeks ago, listen, we've got to keep interest rates low because this recovery is slower than we thought, Vermont's not immune.
Are there any factors here that are different from the national trends that we're seeing? Anything that's either contributing to this or making it less bad?
I would say no. I mean, don't forget, when you go state by state, you know, if you're sitting on huge oil and gas reserves, you're probably not feeling it as much as states that aren't, the Northeast states. But generally, this trend is not unusual to the other states.
I think that there are things, Governor, that we have that are going to actually help us surpass what's going to happen in other states as we go forward. You know, I mean, Burlington is one of the high-tech meccas in the country. We're connected at a level that's unprecedented for Vermont. Our education system, all the things that we talk about all the time, I think actually position us to actually surpass what can be expected in other states.
What areas of government spending do you have the highest tolerance for cuts in? And I'm not talking about specific departments or agencies, but just kind of general categories of expenditures.
My goal as governor is to adjust the spending to the revenues and to say to my secretaries and commissioners, listen, I want to give you as much latitude as I possibly can to make real base spending cuts that adjust to our revenues and still be able to do your job. So, you know, I've given them broad guidelines by which to work, given them as much latitude as we possibly can, and we'll wait and see what their recommendations are. Again, in the big picture, this is a relatively minor adjustment to a $1.4 billion general fund budget, over $5 billion budget.
Will the cuts be uniform across each agency and department?
Not necessarily. We'll make the cuts wherever we feel we can do it with the least hardship for Vermonters.
You've been through this before. What kinds of things do you expect them to cut in the sense of, are there new initiatives that are going to be put on hold, or?
Again, we're going to give them the latitude as the folks who are running their agencies to be able to say, hey, we think this is the wisest way to do this, to manage to the money without disrupting services to Vermonters who desperately need them. And, you know, we're going to give them that latitude. We're asking them to do it quickly.
So maybe I missed this, but do you have any sort of average or expected target for their reduction?
Yes, if you take out the things that I've outlined, property taxes, debt reduction, teachers' retirement, we've asked them to give us roughly a 4% cut to their budgets going into this discussion. Now, all I'm saying is obviously one agency might not have 4%, another one might be able to do more, another one less, but that's the average.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to try to make it as broad as possible, but the governor said there's certain areas that are off limits. He does not want to raid the general fund transfer to the education fund because he understands the pressure that property taxpayers are under. So that's off. And that's a fairly significant piece, by the way. You know, it's like 20% plus of the general fund total. Debt service we got to do, but beyond those, we want to be as broad as we can, give people a target of roughly 4%, but recognizing that when we go through it, there may be some that can actually produce more than 4%, some less than 4%. So we're actually, as the governor mentioned, hoping to provide more flexibility than managers around state government have had in the past. We're not interested in, you know, just sort of reducing positions that might be 100% federally funded just so we can say we have less positions. We're not into those kind of games. We're into actually allowing our leaders, our managers to do what we hired them for.
I just want to point out, as a business person who's had to manage business budgets, this is not new to me. We do this frequently in business. It's not unusual in the private sector. It shouldn't be unusual in the public sector. Point is, we continue to grow. We continue to have good economic news. But the growth rate this year will be slightly lower than we projected. Again, it's 3% higher than it was last year. That's good news.
Given what we knew in April, that income tax receipts were much lower than anticipated, why didn't your administration suggest reductions in spending then? And how can you do this without precisions?
Well, if we adjusted spending every time we get a revenue month, we would have a pretty frantic budgeting process. So really, I think the process that Vermont has in place has served us well under Democratic and Republican governors, all of whom have emphasized fiscal responsibility. We basically have twice a year where we have the opportunity to ask the experts, give us what's really happening out there, and let's adjust in plenty of time to be able to deal with that, whether it's an up or a down. You know, when we sit there, as we did last year, with several million extra, We don't say, how can you tell us that in April? We say, listen, twice a year we get these numbers. When we get them, our job is to be prudent, be responsible, and to act, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
One thing Ann, could I correct something? One thing that's very important, Ann, I just want to make sure, just because if other people heard what you said, they might be wondering something. We are suggesting a rescission. We are going to reduce spending by $31 million, and we will be submitting a plan to the Joint Fiscal Committee to accomplish those savings. So you sort of said, how can you do this without a rescission? I don't know if that's what you meant to say or not, but we are going to have a rescission.
Right. That is what we're talking about here.
How do you do it? But you say you don't see the need for any layoffs. How do you, and you have something that are off the table, how do you cut 4% on average from every agency and not lay off a single state employee?
Well, again, as the Secretary just pointed out, there are other ways to reduce spending without doing layoffs. And this is not a big enough rescission to necessitate layoffs. When we were in a Great Recession, Governor Douglas had to make those choices because he was literally seeing drops of 12% in 1 year in revenue. I mean, that's a huge challenge. Here we're talking about the difference between a 3% growth rate and a 4.8% growth rate. There's a real difference. So this is a manageable number.
I thought that was, the governor mentioned that we had a cabinet meeting last night. I thought that went very well. What they suggested ideas that we hadn't thought of, which we will be thinking of. We are inviting the VSEA to meet with us, not to talk about layoffs or renegotiating our contract, but to see what their suggestions are. And they actually feel they do have suggestions that we can accomplish savings from. So, we aren't, as the governor mentioned, aren't planning for layoffs. We are planning for maximum flexibility. We are implementing some of those immediate measures until the specific agency and department plans are in place. In other words, it's going to be tough to fill vacancies.